Long, long ago, I found myself speaking to an ancient tree, and this tree told me a story of a tall girl. Once upon a time, there was a young girl, and she loved her life. She had so many friends, and she would often play with them, dancing with them. But as you can see, she's like a giant to them. One day, she decided to go out to the forest. And when she was there, she came across something very strange. And so, you know what she did? She decided to yield to her curiosity and crawl through a tunnel. And as she came out the other side, she was amazed to find giants. It was insane because her whole life she had been the giant. So she was ecstatic. And lo and behold, she even found some people her age who also were her height. And for the first time, she could dance upright instead of bending over, you know how like she did with her people.
The end.
So the moral of the story is your people are out there somewhere, no matter how different you may feel. We are now at the very last lecture of the block and the last lecture of drama as we know it, childhood studies 2. And this was my favorite lecture because in this lecture we were practicing interpretive movement. So we had a paper plate that we had to treat as an object without saying. I believe this whole lecture we weren't allowed to say a word apart from if you were a volunteer for something I'll mention later. So the first part was pretending your paper plate is an object, walking around the space, and then the next was doing an interpretive dance with a rock and the paper plate. And it was choreographed, so it was also about mirroring and memory. So we first had to observe what the guest lecturer was doing, and not only that, but we also had to remember it, because by the end he was watching and we had to do it from memory. So the way this looked is Hannah was reading a poem, and line by line we enacted the poem, literally phrase by phrase. And the wonderful thing about interpretive movement is it's intuitive. So if we're talking about the sun that's scorching hot, you might do a movement like this that represents the sun, and like this, because in the scorching heat things tend to dry up and shrivel up. So for learners learning new vocabulary, interpretive movement like that can help them again have an embodied reference for what the vocabulary words mean if they're foreign to them. Now the journal prompt for this week refers to the hero's journey coined by Joseph Campbell. And interestingly enough, earlier that week I had literally watched a video titled The Heroine's Journey by this lady on YouTube. And in this video she explains that there's this woman named Maureen Murdoch who in 1990 coined the term the heroine's journey. From her perspective, looking at the idea of the hero's journey, she thought it was interesting how, well, the perspective of a woman would be a little bit different in terms of how some of these obstacles are being overcome. And so she had reached out to Joseph Campbell just to see, like, maybe she was wrong and the hero's journey really is that it really does apply to all of mankind. But to her surprise, this is what he said.
Maureen Murdoch was born in 1945, and during the 1970s and 80s, she was a Jungian psychologist and a student of Joseph Campbell. Campbell had published his famous book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, in 1949. This was the book that pointed out the archetypal pattern of the hero's journey. In the 80s, Murdoch started noticing that the hero's journey didn't exactly fit her experience, nor did it adequately track the lives of the women that she was seeing in her practice as a therapist. So she started developing the idea of a separate heroine's journey. She took this idea to Joseph Campbell in 1983, and Campbell responded, "Women don't need to make the journey. In the whole mythological journey, the woman is there. All she has to do is realize that she's the place that people are trying to get to." I was so mad when I read that, but I wasn't surprised because that's the definition of benevolent patriarchy, a man putting a woman on a pedestal and reducing her to an object that helps him in his life. It seems that he was oblivious to the fact that the hero's journey only applied to men, not universally to all people, and that women, as humans who are socialized completely differently from men and have very different life experiences, would need their own journey, and not just a journey to help men become whole.